Rough weekend for those of you that are football fans in the area. Welcome in. Rough weekend in sports, specifically if you're a Lions fan or a Michigan football fan. Lions lose the NFC title game with a free fall collapse in the second half. And this morning, Michigan football loses an integral part of their program and their strength and conditioning coach, Ben Herbert. That's where we start things out today. Hope you had a good weekend. I hope you survived the weekend and you're headed in the right direction, whatever, man. We're going to talk about Sherrone Moore. He was officially hired as Michigan's head coach over the weekend. You know that. There's a little bit of hard feelings toward Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh spoke over the weekend saying, he loved Michigan, but he loves the NFL too. And he's going for the Lombardi. Oh, the hit on Harbaugh, the former Michigan coach. But we'll start with Herbert bolting for LA. And, when Jim Harbaugh left, there were a lot of people, whether it's right or wrong, I think it's probably right, that said, Jim Harbaugh leaving, that really hurts, but man, hopefully, they're able to keep Ben Herbert. Like, he was the second most important person in Michigan football, their strength and conditioning coach. Strength and conditioning coaches are the backbone of any program. They work with the players in the off season. And Herbert was admired, and almost anyone who came across him talked about what a valuable member of the program he is. So it is gut punch. It's a huge hole, and like I said, it might be the very top person next to Harbaugh losing him. So that's where you start. And I don't know if this is true, but this was another thing that almost everyone said, whether you're in the media, you're somebody who, knows that was involved in pro or college football. A lot of people were saying strength and conditioning coaches aren't as big of a deal in the pros because the players have their own strength and conditioning coaches. And in college, man, it's really an extension of the head coach, and it's so important. And, like I said, almost every single person said that. So I was like, Herbert's not going to leave, but then Herbert is leaving. So you have to stop and just, think. I think a very easy thing to do automatically is like, that's Ward Manuel's fault. That's, I think, what a lot of people do when something's going wrong with Michigan football. And that's, it's not why he's there, but that comes with the territory when you're the athletic director. I mean, people are going to come after you, and people are coming after Ward Manuel. I'm going to get to him coming up in a minute. I guess I could spend all hour just sitting here and discussing Ward Manuel and what I think he needs to do. And I'm going to address him. He's on a lot of people's minds. Do I think that Ben Herbert would have stayed at Michigan if the Ward Manuel would have given him more money or matched whatever the Chargers were doing or whatever else? I don't know that. Sometimes, money is a great equalizer in a lot of things. Like you could say, even with Harbaugh leaving, it's like if Michigan would offer him $20 million a year, would he have stayed? I don't think Jim Harbaugh was ever staying at Michigan. I think for the last 4 years, he was trying to get out. Not last 3 years, last 4 years, but that's me. And again, you can have your own opinion on that. And I respect everybody that, said, no, there's, so-and-so said that Ward's screwing this up. And maybe he is. And again, we got to get to him coming up. I think that what all of us that are watching this is the Maize and Blue review. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Everyone's a Michigan football fan. And what you want is what's best for Michigan. That's what I want. Harbaugh leaving wasn't what was best for Michigan, but, you can't do anything about it. And, the 9 years, you're grateful, certainly for the last 3, and especially for this last season where he won the championship. But he's gone. And with Ben Herbert, was there any amount of money that would have kept him here? I don't know that. Like, there's a lot of things, like, sometimes people do want to move on, and attaching yourself to Jim Harbaugh, there's worse things that you can do right now if, like, you're a Michigan football coach and, on his staff, like Herbert. There's there's a line of thinking, like, if you said, "Look, Harbaugh is a great coach. Harbaugh is gonna do great things. I'm gonna stay with Jim Harbaugh because that's gonna take me to great heights." I can understand if somebody said that. And there's a lot of other reasons, so it's not always somebody just wants to stay where they're at, even if they're offered the same amount of money. Sometimes people just want to move on. And, like, that's kind of like a lot of people like to do in their career. They don't like to stay in one spot. Me, I just, I'll give you my own personal story. I started as an intern in radio in 1994 in Michigan, in Ann Arbor. I would have never left. Like, that was the perfect job. I love it. I mean, like, why would I want to go anywhere? This is Michigan football. This is the greatest thing in the world. This is the greatest job in the world. Not everybody thinks like that. People are thinking, I'm going to go here and then, I'm going to go national, or I'm, whatever. I'm going to just, I want to be the very top of the profession, making the most money. And, it's not going to be, covering Michigan football. It's about covering everything. So, like, every person has to make those kind of decisions. It's a long ways of going around things of saying, like, look, man, Jim Harbaugh, once he left Michigan, even though he's a Michigan man, and I do believe that he loves Michigan and everything else, but Jim Harbaugh is going to try to do what's best for him. And, he worked with Ben Herbert, bringing along him and being able to give him as much money as he wants. And what, apparently the Chargers are just opening up the checkbook now because their owner had been criticized for being a cheapskate, obviously, for, taking a boatload of cash and moving his team from a place where they loved him to a place where nobody cares about him in LA was one of the biggest indicators. I mean, this guy's just he's just out for himself and as much money as he can possibly get. There's not a crime in that. In fact, that's what most people do. Most people are looking out for themselves, and most people are looking for as much money as they can possibly get. So, they're not thinking. Everybody's not thinking about Michigan. That's the unfortunate part. So, it's just kind of where I stand here. Like, what is my strong opinion on Michigan losing its strength and conditioning coach and then losing Jesse Minter too? It's like, who do I blame? I blame the success of Michigan. And I blame Jim Harbaugh for, if I'm going to blame him for wanting to spread his wings and win a Lombardi trophy, but do I really blame him for doing that? I mean, he earned the right to do it, so it's not, I don't blame him. A lot of people want to do that. And then they want to blame him for now taking key pieces from Michigan because it hurts Michigan. And while that is true, Jim Harbaugh's job now is to do what's best for Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, not do what's best for Michigan. And those are his guys. That's the tough part. Because you would like him to just say, go somewhere else and leave Michigan alone. Jim Harbaugh really likes Mike Elston as the defensive line coach. Jim Harbaugh really likes Grant Newsome. Remember him talking about this guy's he is just it. Like when he would talk about him. So would it be a surprise? Jay Harbaugh. I love Jay Harbaugh. Is it going to be a surprise of those guys? And I'm not reporting that Elston and Newsome and Jay Harbaugh, although it seems like Jay Harbaugh, you could say, is good as gone. But that's it. I mean, so should there be hard feelings towards Harbaugh for taking players off of his own staff? I think for maybe a minute. But then you've got to realize, like, Sherrone Moore's coming in, and, Sherrone Moore has to put his imprint on this program. He needs to wake up every day. You know, the one thing that he may have been able to learn from Jim Harbaugh over the whatever 6 years is that when Jim Harbaugh opens his eyes in the morning, he's thinking about how to win for Michigan football. Right now, he's waking up and thinking about how he can win for the LA Chargers. But everything, every detail is nothing but Chargers for Harbaugh now, and is more waking up and getting after it the same way and looking at his staff and saying, this is what I have to do. Let's see what he's able to come up with. Let's see it doesn't who he's able to keep. College football over the last 3 years has changed more than it has in the last 30 years. And it's changing even more rapidly. I mean, this is like one of these AI things where it just keeps, it just rapidly, exponentially, and just look at it now. 12-team playoff, NIL, players getting offered deals when they're not supposed to. Michigan's got to come in and, the way how much they're going to give to their players. They've got collectives coming in. Are they, what about the players that are enrollees, this 30-day window? Wild stuff all over the place. 12-team playoff coming up. Like, you got to have a plan. You got to be ready to go. You got to be on all of this stuff. I appreciate everybody's opinion. Like, they need to do this. They need to do that. What's first and everything else. Sherrone Moore needs to look at this staff and get it hammered out. And the next thing that is right there along with it with his staff is being able to retain the players that he has and then think about getting players in here. And, you got spring ball, which is going to be involved in a lot of that. A lot of stuff to go through there. Now, that's me just spitting out how I'm thinking about things over the weekend. Let's get to the people and see where they are at, and then we can get a better feel, and I can answer some of these questions about what people are thinking and saying, because everything's all over the place when it comes down to it. Antoine, first up, he says Ward needs to go. This program shouldn't have to overcome their AD. Everywhere else, their AD fortify and reinforce their program as an asset, not a hindrance. All right. Santa Ono, who by all accounts, like I never see anybody saying, get rid of Santa, send him back to the North Pole. Everybody apparently loves him. Jim Harbaugh apparently loved him. Now, it wasn't like he was talking about Santa Ono, the greatest president in the world in Schlissel. Like Ono came in and was like, hey, I know what a basketball is and I know what a football is. And they're like, this guy's the greatest in the world. Or Schlissel, he didn't know how to do anything, apparently. Even though he was a urologist and, during the pandemic, he didn't have anything to say about it. That was always weird to me. I'm getting lost in this. Oh, no. Ono, if Ono was really holding things up with Jim Harbaugh, like a lot of Harbaugh's network and a lot of, people that, want to say they're insiders or whatever else, then Santa Ono should get rid of Ward Manuel. Should just, he should fire him. So, us in the peanut gallery clamoring for a change, tell Ono, and if Ono doesn't want to get rid of him, then you should say you want to get rid of Ono. What I think, I think this is you're just saying this because you're frustrated. You don't know exactly if Ward Manuel is a hindrance. You don't know if he is an asset to the program or not, or a hindrance, as you're talking about. And so this will go to Ward Manuel. There's a point that Antoine has here about Ward Manuel. I would say that, I don't know, at least 75% of the fans share Antoine's view of Ward Manuel, that he is an empty suit, that he has done nothing, that he is working against the football program. He worked against Harbaugh. He hired Juwan Howard. That's a disaster. Probably going to keep him. And that's really only the two things people care about anyways, football and a little bit about basketball. Now, myself, I don't think that there's anything that Ward Manuel could have done to keep Jim Harbaugh in Ann Arbor. Harbaugh the last 4 years wanted to go to the pros. I actually think that people should, if you want to criticize him, you should also applaud him for giving Jim Harbaugh a contract back in 2020 when the majority of athletic directors, the majority of alums, the majority of former players, and certainly the majority of the fans would have fired Jim Harbaugh. But so I don't have a problem with you like get rid of Ward. You don't think he does a good job, but I never hear about you going back. I hear about people saying, "Oh, they slashed his salary." He kept him, and that was a great move by keeping him. So give credit where credit's due, and then if you want to go ahead and criticize him, you could do that. But I'll give this advice to Ward Manuel, and I'm going to reach out to Ward Manuel and ask him if he wants to come on my podcast because that would be a fine person to interview him. I would ask him all the questions that needs to be out there. And look, can he answer everything? No, he has to understand, that there's certain things that he's not going to be allowed to say. However, Ward Manuel, like you look at the professional sports and you look at like guys like Roger Goodell or Gary Bettman, or most people hate the people that run the professional sports. This guy's a joke. But you know what those guys do? They go out and they do interviews once in a while. And if you want to look at Ward Manuel like he's some kind of like he's in an office like a president, you know what they do? They answer questions and they speak to reporters. You know what Ward Manuel does? He doesn't do that at all, except on Saturday he talked a little bit after Sherrone Moore had his introductory news conference. My suggestion is for Ward Manuel that he needs to do more of this. Now, look, he can hand pick who he wants to be that person interviewing him, but I would suggest that he goes and steers a little bit of away from somebody in his own office. Like the last time he had somebody that was working like from MGO Blue TV, and it was like Ward was handing him the questions, and it's like the guy was like, Ward, you're doing an outstanding job. What do you think the women's, no, he should answer some questions with somebody that's going to ask him some tough questions. And the tough question, is right off the bat. Did you really do everything to keep Jim Harbaugh here as the next football coach? Because a lot of people think that you were dragging your feet and that you were glad to have him out of here. That would be question one. Hey, question two, Ward. Jim Stapleton. A lot of people think this is a guy you like sitting around smoking cigars with, and he looks like he's working against the Michigan football program and really Michigan athletics. What's your relationship and what's the deal there? Those are two off the top of my head. Let's go and let's get it going from there. Three, I might get the basketball and say, how are you evaluating Juwan Howard after the end of this season? You're really going to keep him around? Is there really a chance that you're going to? Well, I would ask it a little bit different. But I have to think about the phrasing of asking about Juwan Howard. But there's my advice to Ward Manuel. You need to get out there and do a PR campaign. Sitting in your office, talking to nobody, giving some quotes to, your hand-picked in-house reporters. People are just going to be coming after you. And we know that's part of the business, but get out there and sell your position. While you're at it, sell name, image, and likeness. Let's get onto that, Ward Manuel. Hey, Ward, people think that you're like putting the money in your back pocket when it comes to name, image, and likeness. If I hand $100 to a collective, who's taking care of it? Is $10 going to run the collective? Is $20 going to, your golf fees? Is some of it going out to, the rest of the sports campus? How much is going to Michigan football? How much is to keep the players on the team? How much is looked at it as attracting the best coaches in all of college football? Are those the kind of conversations that you're having with Sherrone Moore? I want those questions answered. There's 3 or 4 questions for Ward Manuel. I don't even think we need to go any farther than that, but he needs to get after that. Let's answer some more questions. Aaron's saying we got to get a defensive coordinator first priority. Well, There's a lot of priorities. I think the first priority for me is there's this 30-day window of a chance for the guys that are on the team and enrollees to transfer. 30-day window to go into the transfer portal. I want to keep those players, as many as I can. There's a lot of people noticing that Kenneth Grant is following Dan Lanning from Oregon, the head coach. He's following Sark down at Texas. What are those programs known to do? They are known to buy players. They are known to promise players. Ask Dante Moore. Look into that recruitment. Look into anything that Texas has ever done. Texas has been throwing money at players since the 20th century. So I don't know if Kenneth Grant is interested in going there, but that's my first priority, figuring out how to keep Kenneth Grant away from Oregon and keeping, Texas's dirty paws away from the Michigan players that are on the team that are being contacted illegally. I'm sorry, not illegally, against NCAA rules. And they're being offered NIL packages also against the rules. And so Michigan's got to deal with that. That to me is the first priority. Yeah, filling out your staff is the second priority. Current players, staff. Priority one, 1A. Doc, give us some positive vibes. We need it. Yeah, there's a lot of screaming. Sorry to bury the lead here, 21 minutes into it and everything else. I think the positivity for Michigan is that Michigan is the defending college football champion. Michigan just put an undefeated season out there. They're the 3-time defending Big Ten champs. They've been in the college football playoff 3 years. And it's Michigan. Like, Michigan has everything that you could possibly want to compete for everything in all sports. It is all out there. Now, there's a lot of things. That's what we're talking about. A lot of balls in the air, a lot of decisions that have to be made. But Michigan has everything. And we have seen it all happen here in the last year. We've seen it. They rang the bell. And so the positive vibes is that Michigan's the champ. And that when it comes down to Sherrone Moore, you see a lot of people about like, oh, Sherrone Moore now is losing the strength and conditioning coach. I thought that's why we kept him. Hey, dummy! I'm sorry. Look, if Michigan would have gone and hired the coach from Missouri or hired the coach from Kansas or anybody else, but those two guys' names were out there. Michigan's entire staff, maybe one or two, would have been around. So they would have lost 80 or 90% of their staff. And all those good players that we're talking about, I would think they would lose 80 to 90% of those guys too. Recruits, probably half of them. They're all going. The point is, if they would have gone somewhere else from Sherrone Moore, they would have lost. And you're saying, you don't know that. Yeah, I do. Look at the landscape in college football. You really think if they would have brought in the dude from Kansas, that there wouldn't have been a free for all for the coaches and for the players? I mean, who's kidding who? Now, is that the only reason that Sherrone Moore? No, not at all. I think Sherrone Moore has as good a chance as the Missouri coach or the Kansas coach. They were never bringing in Brian Kelly. I'm sorry, that wasn't a fit. I know, guys like Colin Cowherd, those, probably 6 years ago was saying, hey, bring in Urban Meyer. But that was never going to happen. Michigan was never going to bring in Urban Meyer. Sometimes you have to explain this. And, people like that follow Michigan understand it. And then other people are like, that's the problem with Michigan. Well, if that's the problem with Michigan, that's the problem with Michigan. They were never hiring Urban frickin' Meyer, and they're never going to hire Brian frickin' Kelly. So if I would have worked for Colin Cowherd, like if I'd have been his producer or something, he's like, I got a real banger here. I'm coming out and endorsing Brian Kelly to Michigan. What would you think? It's like, that's fine, Colin, for you to say that, but it's got 0% chance of happening. But go ahead and roll it out there if you want to. That's the good news. Let me just emphasize that last part again. Sherrone Moore is the best head coach for Michigan in the short term and the long term. And he's got as good of a chance as anybody that you would have hired. I'll put the asterisk out there like with Brian Kelly. Now, with Brian Kelly would have meant that you're bringing along a 6-shooter and a money cannon, and you're aiming it across the country, and you're saying Michigan is joining the Wild West of paying players and promising money. Let's go. Now, you may want that. That's what it would have signaled. You're saying, yeah, woo! We either adapt or die when it comes down to that. There might be a little bit of a point there. Colin Cowherd may have made that point to me. You either adapt or die. It's another part where you want to go back from Ward Manuel. Like everyone's like, they need to get NIL straightened out. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that they just need to start paying players or promising players money? They need to, again, the old thing, like, here's the money, here's the recruit. We can't really promise it to you, but hey, everybody else is, but we're just saying that, like, I don't know. I don't know if Michigan had $500 million in a collective right now, what they would be doing with it. Would they be calling the top recruits in the country? Because a lot of Michigan fans, and I would say I have the feeling that the majority of Michigan fans don't want Michigan to promise NIL money to players to get them, to get the top recruits. The majority of them. You could say, that's not me. I think, and I'm in the minority. Do I want Michigan to cheat? I want Michigan to do what is necessary to compete in college football moving forward. I don't think they need to get all, it's always like it's all or nothing. Like all of a sudden they need to become the U, like, dishing out cash to everybody. But do I need to think that they need to find a way to connect the dots of promising players? Bryce Underwood, maybe Underwood was never coming here because Michigan's smashing the ball, which means run the football all the time and not throw it. I think Michigan should be going out to the number one running backs and offensive linemen and tight ends in the country, and they should be smashing the NIL approach to these guys. And if it's like, hey, here's the money, here's you, we can't promise it for you. We can't make those promises, but come on in. That's what we promise you. Maybe they can start promising. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know how they connect those dots. But the dots need to be connected. And Ward would do well of getting out there, and somebody could get out there and do a better job of saying, if you give us $10, this is where it's going. You might love field hockey, but, it's not going to the women's field hockey team. Do they have to take $5 of the $10 you give and throw it over to the women's side because of Title IX? Maybe. I don't know that. Remember when there was the collective designated for those who stay will be compensated last year? Where's that? They've got a bunch of different collectives, and people talk about it all the time, and Michigan can do this, but nobody really has a great feel on explaining it to me. I'm not the smartest, but I'm also not the dumbest person, and I don't have anybody that gives me a great explanation on how Michigan, who would have fans lining up to give money to them right now, figuring that out. The iron is hot. They need somebody to get out there and explain this a lot better than they're explaining it right now. Because as I sit here, there seems to be a half dozen collectives, and Michigan, they're not getting anything with it. What are they doing with their collective money? Okay, the last year, I know it sounds like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. NIL was a big reason that Michigan won the national championship. But things have changed drastically since last year in NIL. The players that you would have rewarded for this year, most of them bolted for the pros. If you would have been able to give McGregor and Harrell and Colson, gigantic bags of money to stay around, you could say, hey, man, this rewarding guys at the back end with this, those who stay will be rewarded. That is working out like a charm. It's not working out. There needs to be a new approach with it. AJ's tired of Michigan fans defending Ward. Yeah, well, Antoine, I don't see many Michigan fans defending Ward. But I also, like I said, you have a point. Just like he's just sitting in his office right now looking at golf junkets that he can, go to and play in the spring and not worried at all about Michigan football or NIL. I don't know if it's true. I mean, that's what I think, have it set up, that he's just sitting in there, twiddling his thumbs and is working against Michigan football. But I do think you have a point. I want to meet the Ward's an empty suit folks with leave Ward alone. This guy's running, the Michigan football athletics to the tune of over $200 million. What's wrong with you? I want to meet these people halfway. And again, halfway is getting Ward out there and explaining his position and telling everybody what's the directive and what's happening. If he doesn't, then the 75% of people that are like Antoine are just trashing him left and right. It just keeps going up. And if it keeps going up, if we get to March 1st and we haven't heard any interviews with Ward Manuel, that he hasn't done a circuit, you want to call it a PR campaign, he can call it whatever he wants. An athletic director touching base with his fans. If we don't get that by March 1st, then it needs to go to Santa Ono. Then it's time to write a letter to if not the North Pole, to North Campus or wherever the president stays. Then it's on him. Because if the president is allowing it, then he is enabling the athletic director. And again, it's a real easy target right now. Ward is the easiest target in the world. And maybe there's some truth to it. That's why he needs to go out there and start explaining Michigan's position with name, image, and likeness. What's going on with it? How he needs to get it going. What was his role with Jim Harbaugh? Was he really dragging his feet? Now, that would be the question to him, and there's going to have to be some follow-ups there. And he might say, I don't want people to, there's some things that the general public can't. No, that's fine. We don't have to know exactly how the sausage is being made. But sitting up in a locked room and not talking with the people is not going to get it done. And he better be a little bit more aware of that than he doesn't have to sit around, reading Twitter and message boards and watching. But I know that I know that he has watched this show. Maybe I'll just need to send this one to him. But I am going to at least take the olive branch and email it to him and say here it is, Ward. I'm not going to, grill you and put your feet to the fire, but just let's answer some questions. And in fact, here are the 5 questions. Roll with Harbaugh, NIL, and Michigan's current approach. How can people follow the money with name, image, and likeness? What are you doing to combat other teams that are coming after the Michigan players? Those were the 4 questions, and I forget the 5th. Oh, something about Howard and the future of the Michigan basketball program. Rob J., go blue. The Lions game hurt a bit, but we got the blue. Yeah, that's it. I know some people that, and I'm a Detroit sports fan. I like the Red Wings and Tigers and Pistons, and yeah, I do like the Lions. But, it's Michigan. For me, that's the way it's always been. But, I was calling my friends, I've lived in Detroit. I'm a lifelong, I would say, Lions fan, but they were never any good in the 70s. And I liked the Cowboys when I was young, and I liked them for 10 years, around 77 to 87. When they fired Tom Landry, when Jerry Jones, I swore him off because I loved Tom Landry. But my friends who I would watch the Lions game with, they would get so sad when the Lions would lose. And I did not have the same sadness as they did. And I always thought, like, if the Lions ever win the Super Bowl, I'll be happy. Like, I was watching the game, and I really wanted to see the Lions win. I wanted them to win the game. I wanted. But I was calling my friends during the day, like I said, and I was congratulating them, for getting this far. And I was just telling them, like, this is for you. Tonight is for you. I don't have any other consoling words for Lion fans right now. Today hurts. It's going to hurt for a while. Like I think you just have to let it hurt. There's no like sob for this instantaneously. Like, woo! I see a lot of them like, I'm not watching the Super Bowl. You do you. Aaron is still happy about the Rose Bowl. Oh, Aaron, I am too. I look back. I'm old enough to look back to 1997, and I wrote out the 1997 championship all spring, all summer, and into the fall. And I didn't really start getting after Michigan until the first two games of the 98 season. Now, they lost both of them. And I said, Lloyd Carr should bench Tom Brady and put in the freshman from Brighton, Drew Henson. Who's kidding who? Tom Brady? What are we doing here? Put Henson in and get him the time now. Get him the experience. That was the wrong call, going all the way back there. But, yeah, be happy. Like, the thing about Michigan football and following it is it's a daily occurrence. I think there's a lot of people that, once football got over, they started looking to next season and how the team, and people were like, relax, just enjoy the championship. And people are like, I enjoy the championship, but I enjoy thinking about the next year and what's happening. And that's what they do when they wake up. Who are the coaches? Who are the players? Who are they going after? Who are they offering? Every little minute detail when it comes down to Michigan football, there's a lot of people that are on it. But yeah, I'm happy about the Rose Bowl too. That was one of the greatest games that I've ever watched. Really was. I'm going to say this for 1 minute, Aaron, looking back on this season, undefeated season, 15-0. The non-conference slate kind of came and went super easy, and Michigan 2 years in a row. How could I complain about it? They're smashing East Carolina, UNLV, BG, and then the Big Ten season. Rutgers was easy. Nebraska, Minnesota, those road games. Michigan just carved them up. Indiana was at 52-7 in that game. It's so easy. The season was just flying by, and Michigan was like, Michigan. There's nobody that's going to touch Michigan. 50-0 against Michigan State. Rivalry game. But I tell you, after they beat Purdue in that night game, it really, I know this, I said 1 minute, so I got to heat it up. Starting with Penn State, Maryland, OSU, Iowa, the Rose Bowl, and the championship game. I mean, there were never 2 months more of the greatest time of Michigan football in my life. And I enjoyed those 6 games more than any 6-game run in my entire life. I have enjoyed these 3 years of Michigan football more than I enjoyed any 3-year run of Michigan football in my life. And yet, when I was 8 and 9 years old and Anthony Carter was playing for Michigan, there was nothing bigger in life than AC and Bo. So me telling a young little Dennis that, hey, you're going to get old and it'll actually get better, I'm surprised that I'm saying it. But it's true. These last 3 years have been the best 3 years of Michigan football in my life. And so, yeah, I'm looking for. There was somebody today saying I'm not looking forward to next year because of everything going on. Like, okay, let's tap the brakes a little bit on that. I get it. Ben Herbert's gone, and the intrigue of the strength and conditioning coach, that hurts. I have to admit, watching Jim Harbaugh in a Chargers. With a Chargers cap on, talking about LA and all that, it's an adjustment. It's hard. Anyone defending Ward is out of touch. Here it is. Ward Manuel is a weak link. Here's Antoine talking about reports out of the athletic director's office that Ben just wanted more years. This is one that says he's no Ward apologist, but he can't be mad. He's just still celebrating. Look, Ward's got some explaining to do. If he doesn't want to do it, then you need to turn your attention to the president. I just caution you, like, not everything that you see, even if these are like from your trusted sources that are saying things, a lot of people have different agendas and all this other stuff. No. And I don't know if it's a bottom line, but Sherrone Moore is the one. Give your attention to Sherrone Moore. If Sherrone Moore doesn't like what's going on, he needs to slam his fist down and he needs to get on with the president. He needs to have the direct line to the athletic director. If it's as bad as the Harbaugh network would have you believe, it is such a surprise that Michigan has even won, half their games. Like, no support, nobody. There's drama in colleges. You've got politics, you've got money, you got all these things going on. I mean, how in the world does Michigan ever put one foot in front of the other with all these people coming after you left and right? It is up to the men in charge. Right now, that man in charge is Sherrone Moore. And Sherrone Moore needs to tell that athletic director what he needs for Michigan to be successful in the upcoming years. And part of that is a clear vision with name, image, and likeness. And that needs to happen now. Ward needs to get off. I was going to say get off Ward needs to get out there, like I've said before, and explain himself. And I would do it right now. That would be my suggestion. But again, get after the president if you're not hearing what you want to hear from the athletic director. You can say we can't do anything. Well, you can do a lot. Or you could just send feedback in here when I'm on, talking about how, Ward doesn't know what he's doing at all. But there you go. Here's Stoney. The idea that Ward or the U are at fault for Coach Herb leaving is ridiculous. Coach Herb was as well paid as anyone. People sometimes want a different challenge. Now, Mike, look, that sounds very reasonable. That sounds kind of around the way that I was going. But Stoney, like I know, that right now people are, it's a raw nerve. Jim Harbaugh was the best coach in college football. Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in pro football. He gone. And then he's like, I love Michigan, but then I'm taking the most important, person with the football program with me. I mean, it stings. So what are you going to do? I mean, this is it. What has Ward done that is worth a damn? Handcuffing people and letting people out of the door. Well, he got Harbaugh to stay 3 years ago when most other people would have fired him. That's what he's done. So, whether you want to hear that or not, I say that's a fact because I don't know. It's my speculation that over half of athletic directors in the country and half of alums and half of former players and over half of the media and fans would have fired Jim Harbaugh after the 2020 season. I feel like that. So, but you don't have to. You could say, no, they would not have, whatever. So it's of my opinion. And so I think that you should remember that when you're taking shots at him that you don't even know are justified. And The team just went through 3 years. I don't know, did he have anything like I mean, if you watched what like, I love Jim Harbaugh, but did you watch what he did when he went to the Vikings? Was that just to ruffle some feathers in the athletic director's office? He's going to fly out to Minnesota to get what he wanted? And then did he come out and say, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to tell my athletic director to that. Here's the quote. Only to go out and do it the very next year? I mean, like, come on. Like, who are we even talking about? That's all Ward's fault? Come on, Blake. You know better. Hey, look, it is it's a tough transition. There's going to be a lot of this, and that's how it's going to be. New coaches hire and fire guys anyway. Staff was having some changes either way. But Ralph, that seems to be a very even-handed approach. What about Manuel being a clown? Like a lot of people will suggest to you. Or that he is handcuffing the program. I don't know. Is he handcuffing the program? How is he handcuffing the program? By not promising recruits money or not retaining coaches like Jim Harbaugh? Again, like I think that it sounds good. I mean, what do you want to know about the new strength and conditioning coach? He's been on the staff. I mean, I don't know his philosophies, but to be honest, I didn't know the nutrition and workout philosophies of Ben Herbert. I just knew that the players liked him a lot. Oh, I mean, is that something that you're interested in? How his approach to strength and conditioning differs from, let's say, Ben Herbert? I think it's a good. I kind of like that. That's a good question. Brian says NIL is hurting all sports at Michigan. It has nothing to do with the AD. Besides, he needs to get busy on NIL deals for the men and women playing. Yeah, well, it did not hurt last year. It actually really helped. So I know this. It's always where we're at currently. NIL helped Michigan win a national championship last year. I would say that is a fact, considering they got 10 guys in the transfer portal. And when you start going over them, and those guys got NIL deals, when you start going through the players, get wrecked. I don't know what that means. I was thinking about getting wrecked during the Lions game, but I just watched it cold, stone sober. And then, you know what, Jake? I woke up and I felt like I got wrecked during the game. That was the weird part about it. I woke up this morning like, oh, man, it's such a hangover and everything else. I'm like, wait a second. I didn't drink it. What? I just have the Lions blues. Brian says Tress has been with Herbert since Arkansas. Well, maybe he's learned a little thing from his old mentor. Jake wants me. I don't know if you're talking to me, Jake, or everyone else. Let's take a few more here. Kent says he thinks they are set up nicely to turn the page and keep the momentum deep in the future. Young, smart, ambitious coaches. Harbaugh may have stayed a few more years at best. Change is going to come. Yeah. I say I go back to this, but my feeling on it is very similar to yours, Kent. Like, I would have liked to have kept Harbaugh for as long as he wanted to stay here. I knew he was in charge. I knew what kind of coach he was. I mean, he was the hell of a coach. But I do think Sherrone Moore was I think he will have as much a chance as anybody that you could put in there, that anybody that you could have selected. You'd say, what about Kalen DeBoer? I don't know. Realistically, if DeBoer came in, were you ready to lose 75? What would I say? 90%, 75% of the staff and players that you have right here? Is that what you wanted to do and go with Kalen DeBoer? I wouldn't want to do that. I would rather, you're going to lose 20, 30% with Sherrone. It's hard for people. I get it. It's hard that when you have Harbaugh's people and that Harbaugh wants those people, you're like, nice. That is a tough thing to come to grips with. Sherrone Moore has to build his own program. And sure, there can be some Harbaugh people, but he needs to establish it on his own. But keeping what he has in place with the players, having his staff, and then moving forward. What's best for Michigan? Let's see what he does. All right. I think that gets everybody in here. Here's Vance. 4 years ago, the fans wanted Jim out. The AD stood behind him. I agree with that, Vance. I'm with you. Aaron says he thinks he was trying to embarrass him. Yeah, well, I mean, that's that's something that a lot of people say. When you're talking about millions of dollars, is it really an embarrassment? The one thing that Jim Harbaugh could have said after 2020? Stick it up your nose. You're trying to get embarrassed. But nobody, here's the thing when it comes down to it. Jim Harbaugh would have to admit this. Nobody else was giving him a job. As great of a football coach as he was, and I was surprised at that. I was surprised. Not that I get a gigantic asterisk because the games were played, but I do give a lot of teams and coaches a break because the pandemic was a, freaking worldwide pandemic. And I was just happy that they were playing the games, but I was surprised that a pro team still didn't kick the tires on Jim Harbaugh. And I think Jim Harbaugh was too. He was out there and Ward, nobody is going to give you a job. And there's no pro team. I'm not bidding against myself. Here's the contract. Take it or leave it. Harbaugh could have said, stick it up your nose. Instead, it motivated him. Nobody wanted him as a head coach anymore. He wasn't getting offered as big as a contract, so he went back. And what you could say, if you really, and maybe this is what Ward Manuel thinks, Ward Manuel is the one that motivated him to get back to brass tacks, and it would springboard Harbaugh for the next 3 years to Big Ten championships and victories over Ohio State and ultimately the national championship because of the motivation. Now, I'm not going that far. Maybe that's you might look. I don't know Ward Manuel that well, but maybe that's what Ward thinks. Obviously, not a lot of you think that. But hey, there we are. Jake wants me to keep yelling. Yeah, Jake, sometimes I think that I should just kind of talk like this and just go through the news of the day, give my opinions and things, but there's no need for shouting. And yet, I do that sometimes, and I apologize if you don't like it. Brian wants a promotion of Klink and Elston to co-defensive coordinators. That doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. If they came out and said that was going to happen, I would be in favor of that. I'm in favor of Klink as defensive coordinator. Now, why do I say that? He worked with McDonald and Minter for the last 3 years. And he was a co-defensive coordinator along with Minter for the last 2 years. It's as close as you can be. And, like, he's there. He had some, I should say, he had experience doing that. And then on conference of, he has called the plays. I like Klink as a head coach. It's tough for, I think, you and me when you say, yeah, promote the guys you have. And then, you go out, but you want the best guy that's there. I mean, there are guys on the Ravens staff that you could possibly put. But if you do that, what are you saying to Klink? Hey, Klink, you're out. Or start looking around. Can he do the job? I think the tough part for me is that, and this is something that I said immediately afterwards. You have a new head coach. Are you going to have a new offensive coordinator? Are you going to have a new defensive coordinator? First time, not only new, but first time head coach, first time offensive coordinator, first time defensive coordinator, and first time starting quarterback. That doesn't seem like a good recipe for success. So even though it's easy to say, yeah, Kirk Campbell, quarterback's coach, I don't think so. I don't know. And so would I go for the offensive side or the defensive side? Defense has a lot of players on there. They got the system. I think Klink can run it. I think Sherrone Moore just wants to keep running the football. And I don't know, you might not want to hear that. Smash to me means run the football. Dominate physically at the line of scrimmage. The next time I go to a Michigan press conference and Sherrone Moore is there, that's one of the questions I'm going to have down. Sherrone, it's a nice little hashtag. Sounds good. Smash. Like that's your thing. What's it mean? Does it mean run the football all the time? Be physical? I'm sure he's thought about that. There's nothing wrong in football with starting with the premise of we want to be more physical than you at the line of scrimmage. Nothing wrong with that. Now, get that ball in the air and let it fly. You also have to think about that. Here's JS. Ono has to evaluate Ward critically at this point. AD isn't an emeritus role. He isn't Tom Osborne. No, that's right. I mean, he's not just sitting in there like, hey, you're the AD. You don't have to do anything. Just chill. There's no emeritus roles here. And you're right. And that's for all of the people that are screaming and yelling about Ward. Scream and yell about your president, because he's the one that needs to get in there and make that evaluation. And there were a lot of, back slaps and attaboys on Saturday. I want to thank Ward Manuel. I want to thank President Ono. I want to thank the president. I want to thank Sherrone Moore. All right. That president. Now, I know the president's got a lot of other things to do, but football's a pretty big deal. And he gets a lot of emails. I'm guessing that Santa, it's not just getting cards from little kids talking about what they want for Christmas. And then you're getting a lot of emails from Michigan fans saying that your athletic director's not doing his job. Once he gets 100 emails and looks through them, and they're all like, get rid of Ward. What's Ward doing? Why is Ward, what's he doing? Is he just thinking, these guys are, these Michigan fans, these Michigan alums, they're just spamming me. So, JS, I like the feedback, and I think that you are correct. Ono is the one. Antoine doesn't want to just throw money at players, but we can give the players who earn their way into a starting position more money. Yeah, I think that however it's working, and I don't know if they need to come out and explain exactly how it's going, but it doesn't have to be a salary cap, but it does, like, whatever kind of money that you're getting with name, image, and likeness. And I just want to say it's 10 million. I don't know how far I'm off with that or not, but let's just say it's 10 million. Right now, Sherrone Moore and whatever coaches he has, they need to be in contact with all of the players and saying, look, obviously we want to keep you, and obviously teams are going to be coming after you and asking, and offering you money. When that happens, or it doesn't even have to happen, let's talk about what it's going to take for you to be at Michigan. And now you have to have your number. I don't know. Does Michigan sit around and, like I said, if it's 10 million, are they sitting there and saying, "Hey, you know what? Will Johnson's worth 10% of what we have right now in our NIL. Will, here's $1 million." I don't know that. And again, it's collective, and then it's football staff, and yet, what are we even talking about? Because are they technically allowed to be communicating about offering players money, even on the team? Are you allowed to do that if you're the football staff, or this is because of something with your name, image, and likeness? I don't even know those answers. And yet, we all assume that, well, we don't have any, the exact rule is, well, hell, the exact rule, you're not allowed to offer players money. And yet, we know they're all doing it. Let's say, well, they're just, but yeah, Michigan just got dinged for working around a rule, a bylaw that the NCAA was looking at like, this is an antiquated rule. Should we, we'll just keep it in there. Keep it in there. It saves school. And then people acted like this was like the biggest injustice in the world. And yet everybody's working around rules nonstop right now. Need some clarity in all of that. That's why all of these, I was putting the experts, because I act like I'm an expert myself, but they're all out here acting like, oh, yeah, the award's a joke. Let's get NIL up to speed. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know. You're just saying things to get likes. And they might be like, yeah, dummy. That's why we're here, to get people to watch us. I'd say, okay. I'd say, touche to you for that. Brian has some harsh words for Michigan. You blanked it up. How do you win a title and lose everyone? That's the price of doing business, Brian. It's the price of being good. When you're really good, people want your coaches. When you win it all, people really want your coaches. When you win it all and your head coach goes, he wants a lot of those pieces. So that's how it goes. I mean, it's a rough ride. It's hard. You know what they say? There's a lot of cliches, and a lot of them are true. One, they say, you don't want to follow a legend. So Sherrone Moore is in that situation. It's tough. What was the other thing that I was going to say that they say? Oh, it's tough to win at once. It's tougher to go back to back. Because a lot of, Brian, if people are coming after you. That's how you do it. So you can LOL it, but I'll LOL right back to you. Michael wants to know whatever happened to the reload. No, we're rebuilding. Not good. Well, if we were sitting, what if Harbaugh was still the head coach? What would we be talking about right now? Well, Michigan is, Harbaugh would come out and say, he'd be at the Ravens game, and he would have said, somebody would have said, hey, Jim, how are you guys going to stay competitive and stay on top? He's like, Michigan is transformational. We're not transactional. And everybody would be all pissed off at him, like, okay, that didn't work. It worked last year. Is that going to be able to work? Is transactional or transformational over transactional going to be able to work now moving forward? Aren't you going to have to change your philosophy? Hey, Jim, you've lost your whole damn offense. Save your tight end. How are you reloading? I mean, what's Harbaugh saying to I don't know, Michael. I mean, the approach is that, well, you got a lot of guys that were in the 2 deep. I think the answer to that is the transfer portal, and it's spring. And you look at a lot of the teams, and it was only a year or two ago where you'd say, yeah, you get 10 players in the transfer portal, and be like, 10 players. A lot of guys coming in, a lot of guys going out. You got a lot of money sitting there that needs to be dedicated to the players that teams are coming after in a 30-day window. And then, you got to think about going out and attracting other players. This seems like it's a little bit over the top. So does that one. I mean, it's all critical of Ward. And like I say, SW Lion, probably, I don't know if that's Southwest Lion 26. He can't be in a very good mood, but he's saying Sherrone Moore is a great recruiter, but having Harbaugh as head coach had a lot to do with getting these recruits too. It comes down to how well he and the other coaches can develop players without Harbaugh. I think that sounds like a straightforward, and I would agree with that. The concrete pump gamer says, great, we won a national championship, so we are going to settle there. Can't wait to get another in 20 years. No, I don't know. No, 25 years? No. Free Climb is talking about keeping Graham and Johnson. Vic is hoping that Jim Harbaugh takes Ward Manuel to L.A. Calling Ward a problem. Somebody, Dave Brandon, who was saying Urban or Kelly. Well, Colin Cowherd was saying Brian Kelly, and his name kept popping up on like the gambling sites. Odds to be the next Michigan head coach, and I was like, whoever's putting Brian Kelly out there, he's got no chance. But then it was Cowherd, and you know who was saying Urban Meyer? Everyone in Detroit. I worked in Detroit for 14 years, and I went there in 2006. Tigers went to the World Series. Michigan had their game of the century against Ohio State. But then things, you had in 2007, that was it from Carr. But then I had to go through the, Rodriguez, just like you, and Hoke years. And then it was Harbaugh. But then, Harbaugh, hey, give him 1 year, 2 years. Hey, the first 2 years couldn't have gone any better. But by year 4, there were a lot of people, Vic, that were like, Jim Harbaugh just can't beat Ohio State. I mean, he's plateaued. He was great, but, and I kept saying the whole time that I worked in Detroit, look, if there's one person that knows what it takes to beat Ohio State, it's Jim Harbaugh. So hang in there. And it was 5 years. And then the pandemic hit. And I was out. And so there were a lot of people that were saying, because Urban Meyer was out on the street. And it made for, I don't know how to say it made for good content. People are all like, that's for clicks. Well, no kidding. That's what people do. They say things to, get people either to listen, to watch, to read, to get subscriptions. So, yeah, there are a lot of people that saying, why not? He's the best coach out there. I mean, there's always that argument. And Urban Meyer is a crazy example because, the guy's the devil. And, Michigan would never touch him with a 10-foot pole. And, oh, by the way, he would never come to Michigan. It was never happening, but it still had a little bit of interest because if you're really talking about, are you hiring the very best coach? There, you say, well, it's got to be a fit. He's not a Michigan man. And like people say, people need to get away from the old Michigan man thing. We say, but he's the very best coach. But he was in Ohio State. People said, so was Schembechler. So those were the arguments. As flimsy and as stupid as they sound today, those were the arguments. And I'm sure that's what Cowherd's argument was for Brian Kelly. You might not like the fake Southern accent that he's rolling, but he's a great football coach. And he would make Michigan get involved with recruits and make them like the other top 25 teams. And that's what you're going to need if you're going to compete into the future. You're going to need somebody because they don't, Harbaugh guys are Jim Harbaugh isn't just growing on trees. I mean, that's the argument. But fit. And Ryan Kelly's never a fit. Okay. That's going to do it for today's show. No, they didn't. Moose got in here in the last 5 minutes. Let's see what he had to say. I didn't say anything about running the same scheme as OSU. I just want Michigan to adjust to the 2020s. Yeah. Well, that's a whole different, conversation. Like, but I'm not just saying like, hey, look, it worked the last 3 years. Let's, keep it going. You always have to change and you always have to adjust. And because Michigan in 2021, the reason that is the biggest reason that they touched off the incredible 3-year run that they had was because they just focused on running the football. Not really, but it was a big part. Smash. Being physical. I want it all, Moose. I want Michigan to be very physical up front and be able to dominate running the ball, but I also want them to throw the football all over the yard. Can they do that? That's what I want. Okay. For those of you that are always looking for the latest in the Michigan sports update, we have that on our podcast. 15 minutes before this show, I assemble all the Michigan news and I put it out there. Nice condensed version. 5 minutes. You can find that on this very feed that you're watching or listening to right now. And don't forget that the Maize and Blue review right now, we have a special going on where you can get the Maize and Blue review free until spring. Now, what are we talking about here? What we're talking about is free. Everybody's favorite word. So take advantage of this offer by going to michigan.rivals.com. And I was going to say, you need to use the code word NatChamps24. About that. I'll be telling you more about that, but get in and then we'll see you over on the Den talking about the latest in Michigan sports. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching. Talk with you